thank you so much for visiting my YouTube channel. I'm Alison and this is Pilates Leeds. And this week we are all about squats, hip hinges and how to use Dynabands to give an added dimension, a bit more strength training element to those two exercises. So the first thing is, what is a squat and a hip hinge? I think most of us are familiar with the squat. I'll just demonstrate here. There is a squat. And for those of you nervous about squatting, then it's one of the reasons I got the chair actually, then sit to stand is a sort of kinder, gentler alternative to a squat. And you bend at the ankle and the knees and the hips to get down. A hip hinge, there's no ankle and knee bend. Here it is. So you pivot at the hips, you send the bottom forward and the bottom back and the breastbone forward. I think if you're not used to these, then it's quite nice to pop your hands on your thighs to give you a little bit of support. Now for some people, if you've got knee issues, then it's quite liberating to feel that you can safely reach down onto the floor to pick up something off the floor, to do some gardening, to feel that you can do that action rather than having to squat using the knees and ankles. Another thing is, even if you've got healthy knees, very often our ankles are a little bit on the tight side, so they don't allow us to get quite so low. So cutting the ankles and the knees out and just pivoting through the hips can be quite helpful for people. Ideally, of course, we want to protect the back in both those exercises, so you want to avoid rounding the back. So it's all about a pivot here and sending these things, the buttock bones, back. So when you're squatting, you're a little bit of a hinge and sitting back into your bottom. With the hip hinge, pivot here, sit bones back, and crucially I would say, send your breastbone on your eyes kind of forward. Don't lead with the head and the eyes going down, because you end up tending to curve the spine, which is what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to protect the back, so the back moves in space, but it doesn't change its shape. If you know you're a little bit tight in the hamstrings, when you're hip hinging, you can still do it, but you may have to be mindful that you don't get such a good range of movement, or, and it sounds a bit crazy to do this, to say bend your knees a little bit, because we're not knee bending, but if you're a little bit short in your hamstrings and you're hinging and you can only get to there and you can feel your back rounding, then it would be safer for you to allow a little bit of a knee bend. It's not that the knee bending is bad or dangerous, it's just that you may be choosing to avoid it, or it's just a contrast to a squat. So those are your basics, squats and hip hinges. Here's how to beef up the exercise. So you can use a normal Dynaband, or if you've got one of these really mega ones, they're brilliant too. So I've just got them just to show you really. So you're going to put the Dynaband, the strongest one you can lay your hands on, underneath your feet. Get the band as short as you possibly can. And then stand into your feet and you're powering through the ankles, the knees, and then you're opening fully through the hips, and here's where you really feel the work. Because the weight of this Dynaband wants to kind of pull me forward like this, but I'm actively resisting it by standing into the feet. So all the way up the back of my body I've got work going on. And as ever, when you stand here, you can maybe count to 10, but make sure you're breathing. And then come back, resisting the temptation to let the Dynaband pull you forward. So it's effectively like doing a deadlift, but without going into the gym and lifting a barbell. But all the muscles up through the back, the calves, which are active through the work on the ankle, through the back of the thighs, the bottom up through the back, the lower back, into the latissimus dorsi of the mid-back, the back of the shoulders and the back of the arms. All of those muscles are working to hold you up. It really is fabulous. Not only are all those muscles active, but there's a little bit of bone loading as well. So it's a bone health benefit because there's extra load going through the spine as you stand. You stand tall under that extra load. So that's how you do a Dynaband squat or Dynaband deadlift. If you were doing it with the hip hinge, as I say, if you know you're a little bit short in your hamstrings, watch your range of movement. It's essentially the same thing, really. So I found with the hip hinge, I prefer to start here, and then I pivot at the hips. So my buttock bones are back, my breastbone is forward. And then I think in this one, the fabulous thing about the hip hinge deadlift is that in this position, there's more of an overt challenge to your stability because you haven't got the power through your knees. You're sort of hanging over yourself. Does that make sense? You've got this action, so there's more load that way compared to this where you're not having to beat gravity so much. So in the hip hinge deadlift, there's more overt back work there, and if you put your Dynaband on it, well, there's so much good stuff going on. As I say, don't hold your breath. See if you can count down from 10. Tight hamstring people, allow a little bit of knee bend to stop your back curling. If you're not sure if your back's curving, then if you can find one, look in the mirror and do it. If you're starting out, just hip hinge. Maybe do 10 just on their own, because even that, great for the bottom, great for the back of the thighs, great to load the trunk. Be aware that your head doesn't flip forward. Do breathe. Likewise, maybe do 10 squats. And then when you've got the confidence, add the Dynaband. The shortest distance you can make, the heaviest Dynaband you can manage, and just be aware that it is a little bit tiring on your wrists. In fact, that may even be your limiting factor. Oh, and one last thing, keep wide through the shoulder blades and the collarbones. I'm just going to show that one last time, if I may. So here, I'll do it as a squat. There's me standing into my feet, powering up, open at the knees, open at the hips, back straight, head back, and so tempted to round the shoulders. So there's that sense of width through the collarbones. So you're sort of being held, as it were, through the back of the shoulders and the muscles of the back. And then I'm going to not let the Dynaband rule me. I rule the Dynaband as I go up. And that's it. So now, cheerio. Hi there. I do hope you found this clip useful. We've got plenty more on the site, and for now I've suggested another one for you to watch. If you want to know more about what we do in Leeds, then do visit the website at pilates-leeds.com, and right now you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we can do this all again next month. Cheerio!